Welcome back to part 4 of the Myriad Playout training course. In this video, we're going to be looking at Myriad Schedule, what it is and what it does, song and link categories, rules in Myriad Schedule, simple clocks, advanced clocks, clock assignments, and finally, how to schedule into the log. What is Myriad Schedule and why do we need it? Myriad Schedule is a music and link scheduling system built directly into Myriad. Its job is to build content to be used by the log based on clocks that you've created, which may consist of just simple instructions about which music to include, or maybe far more complex in their structure. Myriad Schedule replaces AutoTrack or AutoTrack Pro, as well as third-party systems such as Selector, although you can use a combination of Myriad Schedule and other scheduling systems should your needs require. In order to use Myriad Schedule to generate schedule for your log, you're going to need 4 things. Number 1, you need music and link database. This will include categories to allow you to categorize both the music and the links or jingles. Luckily, we already have that built in the form of the media wall. Secondly, we're going to need some rules. We need to tell the system how long it should be before a song is repeated or an artist is repeated. And we need to be able to specify that either per category or individually in clocks. That brings us on to number 3, clocks. Clocks are kind of structures for automated or live shows. Think of them like a plan for a show. It may include what type of music to include in the hour, as well as any additional content such as specific items, hardware events, timing information, etc. Finally, you have to assign the clocks to hours of the week. This is called the schedule or the clock assignment grid. First, let's talk about music and link categories. These are key for using Myriad Schedule because this is the way that you organize the music on your system. So before you start adding content, it's a good idea to work out what categories you're going to use and then make those categories in Myriad Playout so that as you add content, you can put songs and links into the correct categories from the very beginning. To edit or adjust the categories you have for songs and links, go to the Settings menu, Database Settings, and Categories and Attributes. Here you can see the categories we have on the system at the moment. You can create a new category by just clicking on the Add Category button. Give it a title, and you're done. Let's have a look at some of the other columns in here. The Rules column allows you to set the rules per category, but more on this later when we look at rules. Import aliases are used when importing MP3 files or other data files that may have category information included. So here we can see the rock category, and the aliases are alternative rock, alt rock, black metal, Christian rock, classic rock, etc. So any media file that's imported with any of these aliases will be routed into the rock category. So you can add more aliases by simply adding in them here. You can also set a default color for each category. Use the drop down or the advanced tab to set the exact color you wish. Finally, if you need to remove a category, you can just click on the cross to remove it. You can also see the same thing under the Links tab. So you can create the link categories, and in Myriad Playout and specifically Myriad Schedule, when we say links, we mean jingles, promos, basically anything that isn't a song, an advert, or a news item. We also have advert categories and news item categories. Currently, in Myriad Schedule, those aren't used, but later features will be added to allow you to add advert categories as well as news item categories and schedule those as well. Next, let's look at how we apply categories to songs. Click on a song, click on the Edit button on the Home tab of the media wall to access the Edit screen. Okay. The Myriad Schedule settings are located in the top right corner. First thing is you set the item type to be a song. And then you can use the category drop down to select the category. So if you wanted to change this one to be jazz, just click on the jazz. In dealing with links, it's the same process. Find the link that you want to edit. Change the item type to be a link and select the category it should be in. Save the media item and it's added to the library. In addition to setting the categories, you can also specify whether media items are available to schedule and exactly what hours they are available to schedule. So let's go back to our songs. Have another look at this media item. Click on the Edit button to open the Edit window. This time, we're going to go to the Scheduling tab. We've got a couple of options on here. The first one, allow Myriad Schedule to use this item for scheduling. It's exactly what it says. If this item is ticked, then this song is available for scheduling. If, however, this item is unticked, then this song will not be considered for Myriad scheduling and will also be excluded from library searches unless you specifically allow it to include unavailable items. The second option is the hour restrictions grid. We have a block for every hour of the week, and if it is green, the item is available to schedule in that hour. If it is red, the item is not available for scheduling in that hour. So let's say we didn't want this item to play during the day. We could very simply just highlight the area of the days where we don't want it to play. And now this song will only be available to schedule from 8 o'clock in the evening through till 7 a.m. in the morning. You can also use these preset grids to help you apply these hour restrictions. Let's create a new one. Now, if I want to save this one as Liam's grid, to switch to a different preset, select the preset, click on the Apply Preset. To go back to having all hours available, just simply highlight them, and the blocks will toggle between green and red or red and green. There's one other thing we need to fix on this media item before it is ready for scheduling. You'll notice that the first artist is currently down as the Chainsmokers featuring Daya. The problem is that Myriad Schedule will see this as an artist called the Chainsmokers featuring Daya and will not apply any artist rules to either the Chainsmokers or Daya. It's easy to fix this. Click on the exclamation button here, click yes, and you can see that Myriad has now created two artists, firstly the Chainsmokers, secondly Daya, and it's created a by field, the Chainsmokers featuring Daya. So if we close this, on the media wall it looks exactly the same, but now Myriad knows that there's actually two artists on this song. If you have multiple songs or links that you want to change the category for or add to a new category, you can do that using the Mass Changer. To do that, go to the Reports menu and select Media Reports. We looked at Media Reports earlier when we were thinking about the media wall, so we're going to repeat the same process. Let's say we wanted to look at all the media items between 10,000 and 10,100. There they are. And let's say we wanted to move all these into a new category. We can highlight them all, and then we're going to click on the Mass Changer, which is right next to the Mass Delete, so make sure you get the right one. The Mass Changer can be used to change any of the major fields in Myriad for all of the selected items. In this case, we're going to change the category. So clicking on the Mass Changer opens the Mass Change window. As you can see in the Mass Change window, each field has a tick box beside it. By ticking in a field means that everything will be changed to whatever you put inside the selected field. In this case, we need category. However, category is not currently available. And that's because first we have to select the media item type, because obviously we have different categories for songs or links. So we're going to make sure that this is a song, and then we're going to say change everything in here to be gold. We could combine this with other mass changes if we wished, but for now we're just going to change the category. Click on the Start Mass Change Media Items button. It'll ask you if you're sure. You say yes, You can see they've all been changed to gold. Of course, we might want to change them back, same process. Media item, change it back to pop. And that's them all changed. With the songs and link categories sorted, the next thing to think about, step 2, was rules. The important thing with rules is to think about the hierarchy of rules in Myriad Schedule. There are 3 levels of rules. There is station rules, which are applied as a broad stroke across all categories, and those are set in the station database settings. Then there are category rules, which override station rules, and those are applied on a per category basis. So for example, you may say, I do not want to repeat the same pop song within 4 hours, but I do not want to repeat the same jazz song within 6 hours. Finally, there are clock rules, which are similar to category rules, except for they apply to a category only in the clock where they are being used. So let's have a look at how we set them. First, let's take a look at the station rules. They're station-wide, so they need to be in Settings, Database Settings, Database Settings. And because they're applied on a per station basis, you have to go to the Stations tab and then select the station you want to work on. Once here, click on the Scheduler tab, and the default schedule rules are displayed here. Currently, we have a title separation rule of 2 hours. This means that as a general rule, unless overridden by either a category rule or a clock rule, the same song will not be repeated within 2 hours. Below that, we can also see that we have an artist restriction of 1 hour, which means the same thing except for applied to artists. Finally, we have a station rule that is protecting links. That's currently set to 0, which means we're not applying any station-wide link scheduling rules. Over on the right, you can see that each of those 3 options also has a tick box for this rule can be broken if required. What that means is, in general, Myriad will try and not play the same song within 2 hours. However, if the option is play a song repeated within 2 hours or not play a song at all, the system will break the rule. If, however, I untick that box, then Myriad will never be able to play the same song within 2 hours. It doesn't stop a presenter from doing it, but it does mean that Myriad will never do it itself. Once you're happy with these station rules, click on OK to save them. With the station rules set, it's time to look at some category level rules. These will override the station rules and allow you to set different title and artist separations for songs and links in different categories. To set them, click on the Settings menu, Database Settings, Categories and Attributes. We saw this window just a few moments ago when we were setting up categories. The Rules column allows you to set the rules for each category. So let's have a look at the rules being applied to the pop category. Click on the Rules button and you get a simple version of the same rules we just saw in the Station Rules section. So at the moment we're using the station rules as the default rules. However, if we want to override the rules for this specific category, select Use these specifics and then change the timing in here. So if I want to change this to be 4 hours, I can do so. You can go through and set rules for every category. As you can see, now that we have a special override rule set for pop, it goes green to warn us that something is different about that category. Finally, we want to set some clock rules, which are rules that apply to a specific category, but only within a specific clock. Now, we haven't covered clocks yet because that's step 3, so we're going to jump forward a tiny bit here, but don't worry, we'll be covering this in more detail in just a few moments. To access the clocks, go to the Station menu and then select Myriad Schedule. On the left-hand side, we have a list of clocks available. Let's have a look in the pop clock. Here we see a pop clock. It is what's called a simple clock, and as I said, we'll cover this in a few seconds. However, the bit we're interested in here is the rules section. We can alter the rules for a category by clicking on the button, and we have the same options we had a few seconds ago within the category rules. However, these will only apply for songs in this category whenever this clock is in use. You also have the same options available for links. With songs and links added and rules taken care of, it's time to move on to step 3, clocks. Now, as I mentioned before, a clock is basically a framework or a plan for a show that will be generated by Myriad Schedule, either for live or automated playout. The easiest way to describe clocks really is to have a look at them, so let's do exactly that. To access the clocks, click on the Station menu option and choose Myriad Schedule. This brings up the Myriad Schedule window. I'm just going to make it a tiny bit smaller so we can zoom in. Okay, so this is split into 2 areas. On the left-hand side is the clock panel, which is used for managing and adding clocks. And on the right-hand side is the assignment grid, which is used for allocating clocks to hours of the week. There's also an import tab on this side, which is only useful if you're coming from an older auto-track system, so we won't be covering that in this video. Let's get started with clocks. As you can see, we've got 4 clocks currently on the system, but we want to add a new clock. So we're going to click on the Add New Clock button. This brings up a clock, and there are 2 different types of clock. There is a simple clock and an advanced clock. Let's start with a simple clock. First thing to do is give it a title. Okay, because we want a simple clock, we make sure the simple clock option is pressed. If we wanted to add an advanced clock or convert a simple clock to an advanced clock, we can click on the advanced clock button. But we'll do that in a few moments. Next, we have to choose the default schedule playout mode for this clock. As you can see, you can choose either live assist or auto fade. If this clock is going to be used in hours where there is no one actually operating the system, it needs to be an auto fade hour. If this clock is going to be used in hours where there will be a presenter, we need to switch it to live assist. Let's assume that this clock is for a presenter, so we're going to have it in live assist mode. The next section allows you to specify a media item that will be played at the beginning and optionally at the end of this clock. So if I wanted to play a specific media item first in this clock, I can tick the option and then type in the number I want. So if I had a jingle that I wanted to play at card number 15, I'd simply put 15 in there. Similarly, if I had a jingle I wanted to play at the end of the hour and it was card number or media item number 16, I could type that in there. Remember, media items can actually be lists, so it doesn't have to be a single piece of audio. It could be a sequence that you've created a media item that is a list for. You can also add an auto hook to the start of any hour using this clock by ticking the Add Auto Hook option. And if you click on Edit, you can then set the settings. The first setting is which jingle to play at the beginning of the auto hook. You can click on Browse or just type in the number of the media item you want to play. You can choose a separator item to be played between each hook. If you have a piece of production, maybe a sound effect or a burst of static, you can put that in here. I've got a media item at number 2 that I want to play. You can also have a media item at the end of your auto hook. So let's say it's media item number 3. We can set how many items we should play in this auto hook. So this number here will determine how many songs hooks will get played and included in the auto hook. And remember, it will only select songs that have hooks set. Also, the number of hours to look ahead. So if we wanted this auto hook to cover a 2-hour show, we could change it to be 2. You can set whether the hook should be selected from the next X items in the hour that have hooks, from random items in the hour that have hooks, or the next X items but in reverse order. Finally, you can specify a media item to play if there are no songs in the hour that have hooks set. As this is a simple clock, we don't actually tell it exactly what to play, we just tell it what type of content to include. So we have to include a duration as well. The default will be 1 hour, but of course you can change it to something different. With the general settings complete, it's time to move on to the song category goals section. Here we see a list of all the song categories available, along with how many songs are in each category. We can also see the average length of songs within each category, and as we saw in the previous section, set the rules for each of those song categories. The weighting tells us relatively how many songs or how many distribution of songs from each category should be included within this simple clock. Currently, everything is set to the same value, i.e. 50. That means that there's equal chance of every single category coming up. And so even though there are only 2 A-list songs and 5 R&B songs, if we were to use this simple clock, it would try and have an equal number of songs from each category. Clearly, that won't work, but also is unlikely to be the thing that you want to actually do in a simple clock. Far more likely would be to have a clock that just mixes a few categories. So let's try and set that. We could go through and change each one of these to 0. However, if you click on the 0 All Weightings button, it will set all of the values to 0. Now that everything is 0, we can simply use the sliders to increase the weighting for specific categories. So let's say we wanted a fair amount of pop. Let's set that to be 75. And then we wanted a bit of dance music in there as well. So let's set that to be 25. Now, this is easy to explain in terms of percentages. What that means at this moment is when we use this simple clock to schedule, it will create an hour of content, and 75% of that content will be pop music, and 25% will be dance music. The problem is, if we then said we want to include a bit of gold, we might put another 25% in there. However, anyone who's good at maths will tell you that 75 plus 25 plus 25 is not 100%, it's 125. And whilst it's easy to explain these and visualize them in terms of percentage, when you're setting them, they are relative weight to each other. So here we can see the bulk of the content is going to come from the pop category, and equal amount come from the gold and the dance. But relative to the pop, gold and dance songs will come up less frequently within the hour. So what you would typically do in a simple clock is set these weightings to be the kind of mix of music that you would like for this clock. The link category goals section works exactly the same as the song category goals, but for links. The only difference is that you can specify how many songs should be played between each link that is inserted into the simple clock. So in the example here, we're going to play a link every 2 songs. In this example here, we've set up a couple of extra link categories, so we can say we want a few promos and a few sweepers mixed in with our station IDs. In general, simple clocks would only be useful for overnight or automation hours where you do not need a lot of structure to your output. If you need to be able to specify exact positioning of things within the clock, or have more advanced options such as scripts, hardware events, social posts, etc., then you really need to be using advanced clocks, not simple clocks. So let's have a look at an advanced clock. Before we jump into an advanced clock, let's just quickly review by what we mean by a clock in general. Traditional radio clocks are used to plan shows. They're often in the form of a table or even a pie chart, showing exactly what's going to occur in any given show. So a typical clock might say, start with a jingle, then play 2 songs, then play the advert break, then go back to a jingle, and then play another song. And you can add extra layers of detail, such as the first 2 songs must be pop songs, followed by a rock song, followed by a dance song. Now that we know what a clock is, let's go back to advanced clocks. To add an advanced clock, back to the clock section and choose Add New Clock. Every clock that you add starts life as a simple clock, so we'll have some song category goals and link category goals preset. To create an advanced clock, click on the Advanced Clock button. You'll be asked whether you want to use the current settings in the song category goals and link category goals to provide some structure to your advanced clock. If we would say yes right now, it would fill the clock with an hour's worth of music with a jingle or a link every second item or every 2 items. I'm going to say no because I want to create an empty advanced clock to show you how to build one from scratch. As before, start by giving it a clock name. We're in advanced clock mode, so that's correct. And we also need to select the player mode, either auto fade or live assist, depending on whether it's a clock that will be used for live shows or automated shows. Let's do a live show. The Clock Items tab allows you to actually build your clock. On the left-hand side, you have all available clock item types, and you can drag them across into the main area to build your clock. So let's have a little example. Say I want to start with a link, followed by a couple of songs, followed by another link. Let's put another break in, another couple of songs, maybe a social post, another link, another song, and so on until you've got the clock you want. Now we have the basics for a clock, but we have a lot of detail missing. You can fill in the detail by double-clicking on any of the items in the clock to access the properties for that item. Here you can see the properties for a link item, where I can either choose to use the category goals or set a specific link category. Same thing for the songs. I can go into a song and choose which category that song should come from. Each log item has different settings depending on what is required for it. So if you double click on an advert break, you can type in a reference, or if you double click on a social post, you can type in the script that you want to be posted. Now let's have a look at each of the different clock items available in a bit more detail. The song clock item allows you to add a song to your clock. You can either add a song by dragging it in which case it hasn't had a category assigned, or you can expand the tree and drag a specific category in. You could even expand a category and drag a specific song in if you wished. You're unlikely to do this for songs, but you might do that with links. As you can see with the songs, some of them have a category already assigned, and some of them have an icon here which indicates there is no category assigned. In this scenario, instead of picking randomly, Myriad Schedule will fall back to the category goals set for this clock. So just as in simple clock, we want to include only the mix of songs we want in this hour. So maybe some pop, some gold, some rock. And we might as well, while we're here, set some jingles as well, some links. And if we wanted to set any specific rules, then we could do. Heading on back to the clock items, if we have a look at the actual song item type, double click on it, you can see here are the settings for a clock item, a song clock item. You can either have it automatically choose based on category goals. You can set a specific category. You can set a specific item. You can also decide whether Myriad should be able to drop this song when in auto fade mode or fade it early by ticking the options here. Before we move away from songs, it's probably worth mentioning how when you set an item, a song category in the clock, how that works with the category goals as well. Let's say that we set our category goals to be 75% of pop and just 25% gold. So what that means is if there was, say, 12 songs in an hour, then 9 of them would be pop and 3 of them would be gold. But if I went through and said, this one's gold, this one is gold, and this one is gold, then I will already have match the criteria I set in the category goal within my clock. So therefore, if Myriad schedule was filling in the gaps, it would mainly pick pop music to go in there. The link items are virtually identical to song items. You could drag them in there. You can also expand and drag in a specific category of link, or you can drill down into that category and choose a very specific link, which is actually much more used for links. If we click on the link options, we can see a very similar set of options to a song. You can choose to use the category goals to set a specific category, a specific item, and you can also set whether this item should be droppable or fadeable. As with songs, if you don't set a category for links, it will refer to the category goals to decide what category of links should be played in each position in the log. Now let's look at some of the other items we have available within the log items window. Next up is adverts. This is actually an advert break, not an individual advert, and is used as a placeholder for actually putting adverts into the advert break. This may be done using Advert Manager or third-party advert scheduling system. If you click on the details for the adverts, you can put in a time reference, which can be used for matching to a time reference in a third-party log. Or if you're using Advert Manager, you can specify which category of advert break this should be. A news item is a basic media item that's come from the news range. You can click on the item to set the specific media ID and also whether it can be droppable or fadeable. A basic media item is exactly that. It's just a media item from the media wall. Click on it, set the media ID, or whether it can be dropped or faded. We've looked at auto hooks a couple of times already, so we'll just see how you can put one into the clock and you can access the settings for it. But we won't go through the settings again. Hardware event allows you to switch a hardware card line on or off. If you have a hardware I/O card fitted to your system, you can use this to set a particular hardware line number to either be cleared, which is off, set, which is on, flash, which is slow flashing, and pulse, which is turn on, wait a few seconds, then turn off. Social posts allow you to put in scripts that will be sent to both Twitter and Facebook. You type your script in. You can then choose which of the two platforms you want to post, either Facebook, Twitter, or both. You can also insert OCP tags. So you can say things like the name of the artist. You could say welcome to, and then the presenter's full name. You can also specify a file. Any text file that's in your social subfolder of the Myriad data folder will be displayed here and will be posted into here. So for example, you could say, and then put in a weather text if you had a weather file. This allows you to change the contents of the social posts without having to go back into the log or back into Myriad schedule to change the clock. Absolute times are used in Myriad playout to dictate a fixed point within the log. This is often used for back timing to a time or sometimes waiting for a time. So if, for example, you put one in for 1/2 the hour, then everything that came before would be back timed in an auto fade show so that this absolute time occurred at exactly 1/2 the hour. A reset time marker is a much simpler type of time marker, and all it does is resets the time for everything that happens afterwards within the log. This is very useful for talk shows because if you're talking for 15 minutes without a reset time marker, all of the timing within the rest of your show will not be correct. But if you're talking for the first 15 minutes, then put a reset time marker for 15 minutes past in your clock, and then fill the rest of the clock with songs. All the timing in the songs will appear correct after the reset time marker. Let's remove a few items from here so we've got a bit more space. As you can see, to remove clock items, all you need to do is click on the cross by the item. scripts, exactly what you might think. Those will now appear in the log as script items, which won't affect audio playback, but the presenters can click on to read the scripts. Split groups and split advert breaks. These are used for split transmission system. Split group is a split jingle, i.e. welcome to Hot FM North and welcome to Hot FM South. Same with split advert breaks. Split advert breaks are used for splitting your advertising revenue between different transmission areas or different transmission methods. Finally in here, we've got a clock. This allows you to take a clock and post it within another clock. Now, why would you do that? Well, the simple answer is that a clock doesn't always have to be an hour-long section. It could be 3 or 4 things. So, for example, you could create a clock, which is the sequence that you have at the beginning of all your other clocks. So let's say every hour is going to start with a particular jingle, followed by a sponsor tag for the show, followed by another particular jingle. Well, if you were using that clock in lots of different places, or if you're using that same sequence in lots of different clocks, if your sponsor tag changes, you'd have to change it in all the clocks. Whereas if you created a clock, which is top of the hour, that consisted only of the jingle, the sponsor tag, and then the following jingle, and then had that as a clock appearing as the first item in all your other clocks, then if your sponsorship tag changes, all you need to do is change it within that simple clock, and it will cascade down through to all the other clocks that include the initial sequence. A couple of final things to look at in the log. We also have the chain column here, which allows us to, on certain items, change whether they are green or red. Now, we've already covered in some detail what that means in the log, but effectively a green one will automatically segue into the next item, and a red square will stop. Finally, you can also lock items in the clock. These will then appear in the log in Myriad Playout with a little padlock on them, and a presenter will not be able to move them or delete them unless they deliberately go into the item and remove the lock property. Okay, now we know what everything that can go into a log. Let's actually clear this off and actually create a log that would be useful. Okay, so I'm going to start with a new name. Create an automation log. Because it's an automation log, I want it to be auto fade. And now I'm going to build the log the way I want to do it. So I'm going to start off with a specific jingle. I'm going to say they've got to play my top of hour promo as the first thing in the hour. Then I'm going to play a song, but I'm not going to play any old song. I'm going to play something from my A-list. So pop in an A-list song there. So now it's going to be a song from the A-list. And I'm going to follow that up with another song. But this time I'm not going to specify which category it should be from. And then I'm going to follow up with a gold song. And then I'm going to do a link. But I'm not going to specify what category that link should be either. I'm going to play 2 more songs. And the second one's going to be a pop song, definitely. I'm going to play another station ID. And then I'm going to have my first advert break at the hour. And as I'm using a third-party system, I'm going to give this a reference of 10 past. Now you'll notice that the time here is actually estimated to be 14 minutes past. The time we put in here isn't actually relevant to the time. It's just a reference that needs to match between the scheduling, the advert scheduling system, and the placeholder here for the adverts to go into. So I'm going to build out the rest of my hour following pretty much that pattern. So back to another link. This time I'll leave it free to choose. A couple more songs. Definitely have a gold one to go into this next part here. Play a promo. And then I'm going to play the specific item, which is going to be media item number 500, which currently is a rubber snap sound effect. But let's pretend that we were going to put our news, our pre-recorded local news, into there. I'd probably come out of that with a specific jingle, maybe into another advert break, depending on my format. Change this one to be the half past advert break, and then continue to build my clock accordingly. So I'm going to put a pop song in there, a free choice jingle, a couple more songs. This is an automated show, so there's no point putting in any scripts or anything like that. But we could put in a social post, because even though there's no one in the studio, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be connecting to our Facebook and Twitter followers. Put station ID in, a couple more songs. Keep building my list like this. And what I'm aiming for here is to get to about just over an hour, because I want this clock to be about an hour long. So let's put one more gold track in there. And then we're going to put a specific media item in. Maybe we'll put in one of these sweepers. Probably would be a sort of end of hour. So a sweeper probably wouldn't be what we'd put in there. Actually, we'd probably prefer to put a station ID in there. And then we have a clock, which is built for 1 hour. Now, what will happen is the first thing to play in the hour will always be that top of hour promo, followed by an A-list song, followed by a free choice song. But I haven't set that yet, so I need to go across onto my category goals and choose these. So these will be what categories should be used when I haven't specified it directly in the clock. So here we can see mostly pop, bit of gold. I don't want any dance, but I don't want any rock, but I do want a little bit of dance. Well, let's put a bit of rock in just for the hell of it. Now, what I might do as well is adjust the rules for these particular things. So I may say, actually, we don't mind for this particular hour if a pop song has been repeated in the past 2 hours. You can change the rules accordingly. Similarly, with the link goals, I've set a balance of goals that will be used for any link items like this one here that aren't specifically a media item or a specific link category like this promo one. So that's my clock finished. I can click on OK, and you can see that my clock has now been added to my list of clocks here. So the next thing we need to look at is the assignment grid. And the assignment grid is this grid here, and it is a grid of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in each hour of the week, there is a clock assigned, which is why it's called a clock assignment grid. So currently, at midnight on a Monday, the general clock is in use. And at midday on a Monday, the pop clock is in use. But I've just created a really good automation log. So why don't we use that for overnights? Now, the quickest way of doing this is to hold down the Shift key and highlight the hours that we want to put our new clock into. Highlight our new clock on the left-hand side, and then click on the Set to Selected Clock button. You can also click on either the column or row headers to select either a full hour across the week or full day, and you can even hold down Shift and combine those if you wish to. So here I'm setting my overnights up until 9 a.m. and from 7 o'clock in the evening will be the new automation log that we have done. You can also, if you've got any empty slots, so if I had a whole bunch of stuff here, I could remove them. So now there's nothing in there. And if I click on Fill Empty, it will fill the empty ones with whatever's selected in the side here. Before we move away from clocks and clock assignments, let's talk about clock management a little bit. Obviously, we saw a few minutes ago us creating this automation log, but we also saw it took a fair bit of time to do that. Now, if I wanted to create a similar clock, it wouldn't be a case of doing it from scratch. I could simply take my automation log and copy the clock, give it a new name. So I'm going to call this one Rock Only. Now, the problem here is if I want to create a rock only hour, I've currently got an A list, a gold, a pop, gold in there. So that's easy. As we saw before, I could just go in and I could go through and set every single one to rock. But a much quicker way of doing it would be to go through and set every single one to free choice. Okay, get rid of this last gold. So why have I set it all to free choice when I want a rock show? Well, the simple thing here is I'm going to go into my category goals and I'm going to say, okay, well, I don't want any pop, or any gold, or any dance, and I want all rock. Now, we might have a slight problem here because we've only got 18 songs in the rock category currently, so I may just want to check to make sure that the rules can be broken within that category. Obviously, once I've got more songs in my category, I can then not have it break rules if I wish. Okay, so that's giving us a rock only show. And I think like all rock shows, it should be 8 o'clock in the evening. But now let's say we wanted to make a pop only show. Well, all we need to do now is take our rock only show, copy it, call it pop only. Now we don't need to do anything in here. We just go into the category goals, turn our pop up to full, and our rock down to 0. Check the rules if we need to. Hit OK. And now we've got a pop only show. Let's have that at 9 o'clock. This method allows you to very quickly build additional clocks and assign them as required by your schedule. Now that Myriad Schedule is fully set up, let's quickly review how you actually schedule into the log. We covered this in detail when we were looking at the log, so we're just going to briefly go through it. First and simplest way is if you are in an hour that does not currently have anything scheduled, such as these hours here. If you click on the Fill This Hour button, it will use Myriad Schedule to fill the hour based on the clocks you've created for that hour. So if we were to go to the 8 o'clock hour tomorrow, we know it's going to be rock music, so let's give it a try. All rock music, great. If you want to schedule more than an hour, you can click on the Hour Import tab and check and click on Schedule Import Log. You can then say which hours you do. So if we were to do from midnight to 23:59 for the 24th of April, okay, the system will actually schedule around anything that's already in the log. So the 8 o'clock hour and the 2 o'clock hour we already scheduled a few moments ago will remain in place. The 9 o'clock hour will of course all be pop music. The final situation where Myriad Schedule will be used is if we are in a live show. And the system is in auto fade mode. If we don't have enough content to cover the hour, the system will use Myriad Schedule to determine which music should be added in. So as we're removing items from here, the system is just adding more items onto the end to ensure that our overrun is a 0, and is using the clocks assigned for this hour to decide what music should be added in to make up the shortfall. Let's review what we've covered in this video. We started off talking about Myriad Schedule, what it is and how it will help your station. We then talked about categories, how to create them and how to assign them to media items. Next, we looked at rules, how they are used in Myriad Schedule and how to apply them. We covered simple clocks and also spent a fair bit of time talking about advanced clocks and how to use them to structure your shows. We looked at how clocks are assigned to certain hours of the day. And finally, how Myriad Schedule is used to schedule content into the log. That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be finishing things off with some settings as well as some other things we haven't covered so far.